So great. I think we can start our seminar, our webinar, Fiscal and Technical Reporting webinar, Bird Foundation. My name is Eitan Yudilevich. I'm the Executive Director of the Bird Foundation, and we will spend the next hour and a half discussing the reporting requirements for our programs. So only as an introduction, the Bird Foundation is the U.S.-Israel Binational Industrial Research and Development Foundation. It was established in 1977. Since then, we have been supporting U.S. and Israeli cooperation in R&D and innovation, and we keep doing so. We're not going to discuss the details of how the foundation works in this webinar, because the idea is to provide those that already were awarded information about how to report and how to succeed in their projects, in their joint projects. So our program is that after my introduction, Mr. Tal Kelem, Director of Business Development, will present the technical reporting procedures, and then Ms. Natalie Galperin, our CFO, will present the fiscal reporting. So we're all ready to go. Incidentally, concerning Q&A, we will have a Q&A session at the end, but you can ask questions in writing using the Q&A feature of Zoom, and we will try to respond in real time as much as we can in writing. In any case, at the end, we will be reading some of the questions, and one of us, Tal or Natalie, or maybe myself, will respond to the questions. Okay, so with that, Tal, please.
Can you see it?
Yes, we can see it.
So thank you, Eitan. Hi, everybody. So if I should mention one reason why you should listen carefully to this webinar, beyond your obligation to report to BIRD, of course, it is for utilizing your grant fully. It is quite common that we see companies that don't use the whole grant just because they don't follow our directions. It happens also that companies nominate a new project leader without any guidance regarding BIRD's requirements, and then the technical reports are not complete and the fiscal reports are not in accordance with the planned budget. This may lead to a situation where companies are not using the whole grant and they discover it only later when it's too late. So please be with us and pay attention to this webinar. And okay, so in this webinar, we cover actually the whole 2019 programs. We did have a seminar here in Tel Aviv last January for the Israeli companies, but unfortunately, we couldn't have one in the US as planned because of the COVID-19. So today we have companies from the board meeting that was last December, and also from the recent one 2 weeks ago in June 2020, from the general board meeting. You can find the names of your companies in this table, but we don't have the time to mention all of you. Also, we have here companies from the last Bird Energy program of 2019, that was last October, and for the Bird Homeland Security program, that was also last December. So we have actually 4 programs here with us. From the recent program also, we have the Israeli companies, and also we have some companies that just ask us to join and be with us to have better understanding again of the process. Every time that we have a new program and we announce about the winners in the media, you can see here in this slide the general BIRD program announcement. On the left side, it's the December 29th. Okay. Okay. Can you see this slide? Natalie, can you see it? I can't hear you.
Yes, I can.
Okay,
It's better than before, yeah.
Now it's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So as I mentioned, we have the two general programs. We have the bird energy and homeland security programs here with us. We have the PR announcements on the right side from today, on the left side from last December. We have here also announcement of the bird energy and bird homeland security programs. And you will be able to find this presentation later on, so you will be able to see it on our website. So this is the bird team that is here to support your projects. Eitan, of course, is our CEO, and Natalie and Oriana are the financial department women. Natalie is leading the fiscal reports. Chava is here. I think all of you know Chava already because she's corresponding with all of you regarding the CPFA and the other materials that you need to supply to us. Maher, also here with us, is in charge for the IT. Any issues with the upload or something that just happened to me now, Ma tried to help me with through the WhatsApp. And we are here also for PBC, what we call primary bird contact. Each one of us is the point of contact for your project. So it's Eitan himself, Limor, Omer Carmel, and myself. Also, we have here with us Andrea and Maya, our representatives in the East and the West Coast in the United States. So as I said, you will be able to find this presentation. Hopefully, you will be able to view it later on. This is the way to watch it on our website. You go to the tab of the guidelines and forms, down to the fiscal and technical seminar handouts, and then you will be able to see this presentation and Natalie's presentation. Also, all materials, you're supposed to know that already all the materials of BIRD are able to be found on the procedures and submission forms. You can read here the entire procedures handbook. This is a good read for the weekend. And all the information and the templates and reports that you need to submit to BIRD during the project's lifetime. But the entire procedures handbook details everything for you to follow up on the project. So let's start with the reporting. All the materials of the reporting are as well on our website under guidelines and forms, under procedures and submission forms. You will see under the reporting all the forms that are required for you to report to us, both the technical reports material and the fiscal report. So just to mention a few critical dates that we all know in order to understand each other. So first of all, we have the effective date. The effective date is the date actually that the project starts. It can start earlier than the CPFA signature and earlier than the Board of Governors meeting, up to 3 months earlier, but frankly, we don't recommend it. We think that projects might have complications because sometimes the project starts 3 months earlier. You just sign the CPFA and already you need to send us the first report. It may lead to problems. Also, imagine what happens if you started to work on the project before the CPFA signature and suddenly one of the partners decided to retreat and not to go on with the project. So we always suggest to sign the CPFA first, but for companies who already cooperate and already have expenditures, it is legitimate to start the project earlier than the CPFA signature, and then the effective date will be the first date of the project. The last day of the project is the termination date, the termination of the product development. And there is the CPFA signing date. This is the date that we sign on the agreements with the company, the final date that BIRD sign on it, and then they pay the first down payment to the project to the companies. So if we understand those three critical dates, then we can look at the general typical project BIRD structure and understand the reported timing. So let's take for an example, an 18-month project. Usually such projects have 3 segments of 6 months each. And then you are able to see here when you should report to BIRD about the project. So first of all, the project starts with the effective date, even though if it's earlier than the CPFA date. And then 6 months later, after this the effective date, you need to prepare the first interim report and send it to us. We give you a month to prepare it, so actually you need to send it to us after 7 months from the effective date. Same goes for the second segment. You have 6 months for this segment, and you have another month to prepare the interim report and send it to us. And then you have the third segment, which ends with the termination of the project. And then we give you two more months to prepare a full report of the final results of the project and send it to us. Some guidelines about how to prepare those reports. So first of all, as I said in my first remark, pay attention to the details. Try to work by the book. Try to make it easy for us to understand. Explain acronyms, explain abbreviations, explain words that are typical to your industry, but maybe other people cannot understand them. And basically, you need to understand that if we find the report difficult to understand, we see that information is missing, we see that it's not accordance with the template, we see unexplained deviations, all this may lead for us to put this report on the side and think, okay, now we need to speak with the company, we need to find out what's going on. And then the report check is halted or delayed, hence the fiscal check is delayed as well, and the payment. And it happens that I just recently received a report from a company that changed their project leader. I think that the new project leader is here with us now. And they sent me a beautiful report with beautiful diagrams and pictures and very colorful, but I couldn't understand a word of this report because it was written very briefly. And I had to ask them to rewrite it again. And then we had a Zoom meeting and they explained it to me. And for me, it was very good to learn the project deeply, but for them, it was a delay of about a month until the fiscal report check started. And in general, if you have any questions, if you ask yourself what you should do now, just give us a call. The PBC are here to support your project. We want your project to succeed. Of course, that you can contact all the other people at BIRD for fiscal issues, Natalie and Orion, Chava for other reports. But if you need to ask anything else, or if you want to consult with us, we are here for you to support your project. How do you report? You already should know so people tell me that I should make a full screen, but somehow I don't find it now after the problem that I had with this.
You are in full screen. You are in full screen.
I'm in full screen. Okay, thank you. So, sorry, it jumped. So you already know the upload system. You upload the system with your username and password. You sign in with your username and password. You find your project, and then you find those steps of the executive summary that you already sent to us in the proposal. And next to it, you will find the technical reports tab where you need to upload a fiscal report for each company, a separate report for each company, so you can feel comfortable when you send us the fiscal report. It's for our eyes only. But the technical reports, we ask the companies to prepare it together and to send it to us when both companies are signing on it. Even though you uploaded it to the upload system, we are not going to check it until we will receive in our office the printed report signed by both companies. This is mandatory. So always after uploading the files, try to send us the hard copy as soon as possible. We always have here projects to review. So you need to understand that only when we receive this hard copy, we start to checking your report. What about the content? So first of all, you need to add to the report the cover page of a standard report template that you will be able to find on the website. As I already said, both companies need to sign on the report. If the project manager is different from the authorized company official, then we ask both of you to sign. If it's the same person, you need to sign twice, but we want to see the signatures of both companies. And of course, after the table of contents, we want to see the objectives of the project. And you need to describe the overall objectives of the project and the work performed during the current segment. After that, the summary of the accomplishments of this segment in accordance with the objectives stated above, and the results chapter, which is relevant to these segments on a task-by-task basis. We want you to review the milestone attained and the deliverables. I remind you that you have the Annex E that was a part of the CPFA, where you detailed the milestones and deliverables that your project will reach, and we want to follow up on that in those reports. We want you to explain any deviations from the program plan. We do understand that it's a dynamic ecosystem, that things happen, that sometimes the R&D is not moving as you expected, and there are problems, but keep us updated, and we want you to express it in this report and to update us on those deviations and about the implications of those deviations, so we will understand where this project is heading to. This is the template for you to use to describe the milestone and deliverables. You will find it as well on our website. You should use the paragraphs that are relevant for your project. If this is the first segment, then of course you don't need to relate to the previous segment's report. What are your plans for the next project segment? So we want to understand where you are. We want to understand where you are heading to. If you need to reschedule some activities, this is the place to do it, and the impact of changes on the program plan. And regarding extension, also this is the time to consider that, because we do allow you to ask for an extension, but it has to be always 3 months before the termination date, and don't wait until the last day before you think that actually you need a few more months to complete the project successfully. And to all that, we ask you to attach a Gantt chart. As you already know, you have the Gantt chart from the proposal that you prepared to us. Now we want to see on the original Gantt chart the rescheduled tasks and the rate of completion of each task, with explanation, of course, where needed. We also want you to detail the cooperation between the companies. We hope that you communicate good, that you have good communication, that you cooperate smoothly. But I have to mention here that even though this looks maybe like a minor chapter in the report, this is very important, because we see quite a few from time to time projects that fail just because the companies don't speak in the same language, don't share the same targets, and see things in differently. It also may be because the champion in one company left, and suddenly you don't know who to cooperate with in this new situation. So a few hints about how to develop a successful partnership. You always need to identify what's going on in the other company, how important it is for them, how important it is for your champion compared to his colleagues, and see how you can cooperate with the company, not just with one person. Also, you should recognize cultural differences. In Israel, if I send an email at 11 p.m. at night, I sometimes receive a reply 10 minutes later. In the United States, it takes sometimes 2 days for a reply to arrive. So consider those cultural differences and keep the relations smooth. And manage the relations across the network. Try to develop communication routes with a few people that are involved with the project. Try to reach the leaders of the company. Develop even agreed procedures in case of challenges. What happens tomorrow if you have a conflict? How you are going to solve it? It's better to decide now what it will be the way than neglect it later, and suddenly we see projects evaporate just because people don't know what to do when the project is stuck. create formal and informal relationship between the companies. It's always good to have a friendly relationship to move on in a good atmosphere. So another important part of we are still in the technical reports content, and the next part is the risk analysis. You know the risk analysis because you wrote it down in your proposal. Now we want you to update it according to the situation. Maybe the risk is lower, maybe the risk is higher. We want to see that you know that you are aware to the risk, you are aware to the ecosystem, you are aware to the situation that you are acting in, and you update us accordingly. And we also know that to see that you know the market and commercialization plans for the future. It is less maybe relevant in the first or second segment when you just start, but it is very relevant in the later segments of the project and in the final report. We want to see that you know your market and that you understand the impact of the market changes on your program plan and on your activity. We want you also to update us with the published information. Any article, any patent, any PR that you did on the project, please share it with us. Let us know. It's important to us because we want to expose BERT to good companies in the future. It's important for us because we want to see that you are active. It's also important for you because sometimes BERT is a good stamp of approval for projects and for companies. And just to show you two examples, this is an article about a project between ELTA and the Israeli company and TLC from California. And we didn't ask them for anything, but they included a full paragraph about the BERT Foundation and approving their project as part of the BERT activity. And another project that is running now, I think that Ben Alfi is here with us in this webinar. They published a PR, and the first paragraph is about BERT. Again, we didn't ask for it. It can be also the last part, the last paragraph in this article, but just mention BERT when you report or when you write, when you announce on your project and about your joint projects with each other. And if this is not clear enough, then you need to remember that it's also part of the CPFA. When you sign on the CPFA, there's an article saying that in any publication, you need to mention the support of the BERT Foundation in this article. After in the last segment, sorry, the last final technical report is different from the interim reports in this respect that it has two parts. The first part of the final technical report is same as the interim report, but it doesn't have the plans for next project segment, of course. But it has to include the future activities, future development work planned with the product and marketing activities that you are going to launch in pushing this product forward. But in this report, you have two parts. In the second part, you need to have an updated marketing forecast, which is required separately. And we also ask you to add here the signatures of the company marketing officer or VP marketing, NCO. This shows you that we think that this marketing focus is very important for us to understand where this project or where this jointly developed project is going to now after the project is ended. So in this final technical report, we ask you to rethink about the products and application. You have a new technology, maybe it can be adapted to several products. Maybe there are several markets that you didn't think earlier. We want you to consider the market acceptance of those products. And what are your commercialization forecasts? Updated 3 years from the end of the project, including market size and compared to the forecast that you added in the proposal. There are many questions that companies ask us during the project. some of them are listed here. For example, if the actual progress is lower than the program plan, what do? Do you need still to submit the technical reports? TR stands for technical reports. Yes, you should. If the spending is less than the forecast, yes, you still need to send us the technical report. If the actual spending is much greater and the project is moving ahead faster, then let us know about it. Call us, let us know about it, and we think what should be done to continue with this project as planned. Only fiscal report is ready, or only technical report is ready. This is not enough. We wanted to send both reports together and sign them together. We cannot check only a part of the whole package of the 3 reports, the technical reports and the 2 fiscal reports of each company. If the project scope changes, let us know. Write us, consult with us, request a formal modification if required, maybe an extension, consult with us, and sometimes we make a brainstorm with the companies together to decide what will be the best move for them. If more time is needed, again, let us know, and maybe the program will be extended as needed. And if you complete the project ahead of schedule, just let us know, complete and submit the technical reports, the final technical report of the project. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you, Tal, very much. So now we are ready to go over the fiscal reporting, and Natalie Galpering, our BIRD CFO, will present. Let me remind you that you can ask questions through the Q&A feature, and at the end, if we have time, we will answer questions orally also. Natalie, please.
Okay, hi, good day, everyone. Okay, so I'd like to refer to the fiscal report, but just a second. First, I'll try with the topics that I'll be discussing today. What trigger payments based on the CPFA? I'll refer to the agreement. CPFA is the Corporation Project Funding Agreement. That's our abbreviation for the contract that both companies sign with the foundation. I'll be referring to the fiscal report, the structure, what is included in the report, what documentation is required, how to handle a variation from the budget, and the last topic would be the repayments, the general obligation, and the reports that are based on the that should follow in the commercialization phase. Okay, so now we're looking at Annex B to the CPFA. Annex B details the payments to the companies. Here we have a blank template where you can see we don't have numbers here, but each CPFA has different numbers. The numbers are based on the total budget of the project, and it is based on the way it is split between the companies. The first payment will follow several days after signing the CPFA. It is an advance towards the first segment. The first payment varies depending on the project duration, number of segments, and the total budget. It is usually between 15 to 20% of total grant. Second payment will follow after review of the first report. You should be submitting, for example, a report after 6 month period. That's the average duration of a segment. We'll be reviewing the full set of reports, the fiscal and the technical report. And if the level of expenses reaches the trigger that is detailed here, the required expenditure, then you will be entitled to receive a payment as is stated in the CPFA. The payment will be detailed here. And this Annex B will be number of payments according to project duration. It will usually have third, fourth payment, and then there will be a final payment. If you add up all payments, it looks like it doesn't reach the grant, but the final payment is the one that complements the entire grant. It is conditional upon the fiscal audit. Annex E is we still call it a new annex. It was revised last year. It details the project milestones and deliverables. It is in addition to the Gantt chart that should be submitted when you present the CPFA towards the signature. It should have description of major milestones, not as much as detailed in the Gantt chart, and what achievements are expected after each milestone. Later on, when we review the technical report, we'll be comparing it to the Annex E. What are the submission requirements? The interim set of reports contains one fiscal report from each company and one joint technical report. Each report has a signature page. The fiscal report has 3 signees on the signature page. I will show you the cover page in a few slides. Technical reports have only 2 signees. Those reports should be submitted within 30 days after segment end. The last final report will be submitted within 60 days. An incomplete submission, which means that not a full set of reports is submitted, will not advance the payment for the segment. I should also point out that for Israeli companies, VAT should not be included when you present expenses. Now I'll refer specifically to the fiscal report. The fiscal report has 10 sections. Here you can see the general, usually the accepted expenses for each project, and now I'll be discussing how to report and what are the procedures for each expense. Looking at the cover page, you'll see that there's a bird reference number. Each project has a 4-digit number, which is our internal number. You should have this number on the approval letter, usually on the left corner of the letter. Please refer to this number when you submit the reports to us. Project title is the title of the project, and just underneath, there's the company name. Here we can distinguish between the US company and the Israeli company. Type of report, it is usually the interim report, unless it is the last report. Reporting segment should start from the first day of a month until the last day of the last month of the segment. So it should cover a whole month. Start date is the effective date, and it is part of the CPFA. And here you also specify the number of months in the segment. You'll see that the cover page is mostly white. That means that you don't need to fill it out. It will be filled out based on the next pages to follow. Just so you can see what we have here, we have the column on the left. That's the cumulative actual expenditures so far. So in the first segment, you'll have expenditures for the first segment. After the second segment, it will be a cumulative figure for 2 segments. On the second column on the right, you'll have total approved budget. Here you fill out the full budget for the entire project. So you don't need to adjust it after each report unless you have a budget revision. And then this way you can also see where you stand with your expenditures in comparison to the full budget. At the bottom, you'll see 3 yellow cells. The budget, those are just for estimation purposes. It is not part of the budget. It is not part of the triggers. It is used just for reference. You can see here budget for current reporting segment. This way you can see whether you're within budget or perhaps you're over expensing or under expensing. You should also provide your estimation for the next segment. And if you have a different estimation towards the end of the project, here it's also for your reference, just to see that you're within your figure of the project. The next page is the cover of the signature page. As you can see here in the fiscal report, there are 3 signees: the company or the project manager, or it could be at a different level depending on the size of the company or who manages the project, accounting official, and another authorized official. It is somebody also who is in charge of the project, and usually it is somebody different. In small companies, some of those positions could be the same person. The first expense is direct labor. Here you should specify the employees that were employed in the project in the reporting segment. What is more important is the profession of the employee. Sometimes the employees change, but the profession should be one that is described in the budget, which is an Annex A to the CPFA agreement. The exception to this rule is if you have a key person that left the company, left the project, you should report not just in the fiscal report, but you should write us an email and inform us specifically of this change. You can also detail it in the technical report. For each employee, you should mention how many months the employee was employed in the project. Here we mean not a whole month, but it could be part of the month. For example, an employee who worked 1 week of a month on a project, it should be accounted here as 1. And then in the next column, percentage on project, for this month, you should write 25%. And that's how you fill out for 6 months. You can use either average percentage for each averages of monthly averages, or take the entire 6-month reporting period and the entire time worked on the project during those 6 months to come up with the percentage on the project. Gross salary, you should multiply the monthly salary for the month that the employee worked on the project times the relevant percentage. You should be aware that the column here doesn't have a formula. You should compute the gross, the applicable figure outside this sheet and just type in the correct gross salary for this relevant period of time. The same practice you should do for social benefits. Those 2 columns add up to total charge to project. That's total charge for this particular segment. Next column will be total previously reported. This number you should type in from your previous report. You should match exactly the previous report, so the opening balance in this reporting segment should match the closing balance from the previous report. Cumulative to date will add up the 2 columns of total charge plus total previously reported. And then you should fill out the approved contract budget. That's again from Annex A, and it shouldn't change throughout the project. One rule that is relevant to direct labor are salary caps. In our foundation, we have caps that can be paid to employees. In Israel, the cap is $100,000 for a full-time employee that is employed 12 months on the project. From this number, you should deduct the relevant portion that is applicable to your employee. For example, an employee who worked half a year, that means that the cap will be only 50,000. And if that employee worked only 50% of those 6 months, it should be multiplied by 50% of 50,000. And this way, that's how you should compute the cap for each employee. In US, the cap is 150,000 per employee for full-time employment. The cap includes gross salary and social benefits. So that's the entire cost that could be attributed to the project. You'll notice at the bottom of the table, there's a 25% overhead. The overhead comes to compensate for overhead staff. That means, for example, legal people, finance people, secretarial staff. It is not a compensation for social benefits. As you can see, it was compensated for earlier. It is compensation for people that shouldn't be reported in the previous sections. When we look at professions, we expect to see technical people, research people, marketing people, people who are directly involved in the research and the sales and the marketing of the project, not the overhead staff. So you should be aware when you prepare the budget and later on when you report on employees that worked in the project. Here you'll see a summary of what I just presented. You can use it later on for your reference. Next budget item is equipment. Here in each line item, you should detail the major equipment categories. And later on, I'll show you the schedules where you can detail at an invoice level the specific pieces of equipment. So here, for example, if one line item presents machinery, some specific machinery for the lab, then it could be comprised of several pieces of equipment. Specify, please, the date of purchase. If you have several pieces of equipment, just refer to the one that is most significant in value. Purchase price, percentage on the project, it is the same practice as with employees, and it is actually the same practice throughout the report. You should always multiply the percentage used on the project by the price. Number used on the project. So if it was a purchase somewhere within the segment, you should write the number of actual month. If it was already carried over from previous segment, it will probably be 6 months. The depreciation is calculated over 3 months, over 3 years, a straight line. That means that a piece of equipment could be depreciated at over 36-month period, assuming that it is fully depreciated at the end of the project. We have one exception for equipment, which applies only to equipment. You can report your equipment that was purchased prior to effective date. Of course, the percentage used on the project should reflect the fact that it was previously purchased, so it can't be reported as 100%. The percentage should be something that matches the periods as well. I'm not referring to the other columns, since they're basically similar. You should report previously reported and then charge to project. It is all the same template throughout the report. You can also present here list equipment. So again, here you can use this slide for future reference. Next item on the budget are travel expenses. We accept both local, domestic travel and foreign travel, if it applies, and this time the foreign travel. But here you should report the person who travels, date of travel, destination, as well as the purpose of travel, and what you charge to the project. Again, if the purpose of the trip was several purposes, and only one of them was for the project, you should multiply the expenses by the relevant percentage. For example, if the trip was for 10 days and the project assignments were only 2 days, you should report 2 out of 10 that are allocated to the project. You should keep with you some justification and the invoices for audit. You should keep, for example, the air ticket, hotel, car rental, everything that was reported here should be kept for audit. Will be all projects are being audited at the end of the project after termination. So documentation should be kept not only for travel, but for all expenses that are reported in the project. Next budget item are materials. Those are expendable materials, which are not, of course, not equipment, but things that are expensed, which you purchase for the purpose of the program. Again, you should report major line items here, and the schedules that will follow, that's where you can present on an invoice level each expense and each invoice. Other budget items include subcontractors. Again, you should here write the service that was performed. And we have also consultants, exactly the same template. We have also a template for other budget items. Here, usually companies report marketing expenses, regulatory expenses, and also patents. Just to elaborate on patents, we allow patent registration costs up to 20,000 in one country per patent in one country, with additional 5,000 in another country, and the same expenses for the second patent. You should be aware that we don't allow reporting of legal expenses, only registration and the fees that are paid to different institutions and the different registration fees. In regulatory expenses, we do allow the regulatory consultant to be reported as part of the budget. Supporting schedules. Here's a template of a supporting schedule. That's a standard supporting schedule. You can see here that that's for equipment. So here you can detail each piece of equipment, name of the supplier, date of invoice, number of invoice, date of payment, and some reference to the document, whether it is a check number or some maybe line item in your credit card report, but something to match the expense with the payment. Here you'll see just that's the same template for materials, subcontractors, everything is the same throughout the report. Consultants and other expenses. Now I'd like to talk about what happens when you experience variation from budget. You can have variation of up to 15% in each budget item without asking for budget revision. Of course, you should be underspent in another budget item, so you can be above budget in any budget item. When you'd like a variation which is higher than 15%, you should have a specific request for budget revision. That means that, first of all, you should write us a letter, an email, explaining the nature of the budget revision. What happens in the project, why you would like to have this variation, the budget revision, the nature of the revision, not only describing the numbers. Then you should also submit the summary budget, the 2-page budget, with the new budget that you are requesting us to approve. The budget revision can be submitted, and it should be submitted by one company only, since it affects only this one company. It is not a joint request. You should upload it to our website, but budget revisions, sometimes it is also convenient to receive them by email. So this way we know to follow, and it is more effective when we receive the budget revision as well by email. The budget revision should be submitted, the request should be sent to us no later than 3 months prior to project termination. that rule actually applies to project extension as well. If you'd like, we didn't talk about it, but if you'd like to have a project extension, you should also send us a request no later than 3 months before project termination. The budget revision is something that affects the CPFA. That means that you should be receiving from us a formal letter of approval. If you see that you don't receive it within 2 to 3 weeks, please write us another email. It is probably somehow wasn't sent properly or wasn't handled yet. So it's okay to send us a reminder and ask us what happened with the budget revision request. You should be, don't assume that it was just approved by itself. Also, don't assume that the budget revision is something that could be implied from your technical report. Even if in your technical report you discuss it and it is quite clear, there should be an explicit request according to the procedure that I described, a separate letter and a new budget that applies to your request. Here I'd like to give an example of what happens to a budget if no request was sent to us. It is important because quite often we see companies that don't utilize their grant even though they expense even more than their budget. And it seems that some, I mean, at this point of time, when you're just starting your program, it seems that it can't happen. If you have enough expenses, why a company wouldn't utilize the grant? But it is not so rare to see companies that are underspent in what we call in our terms. So here on the left, you'll see the original budget. As you can see, it's 693,000. Actual expenses, those are the expenses that were reported to us in those fiscal reports. You can see that they add up to 698. So in this case, you would assume that the company should fully utilize the grant. Now, if we apply our procedures, we can see here what happened. The direct labor, the company was actually underspent. It reported 450,000. The budget was 500, so we can accept and recognize 450. For materials, the company had a budget of 100,000. It reported only 80,000. Again, we can accept the entire expense of 80,000. So just from those two items, you see that the company is underspent, so it has enough budget to overspend in another budget item. So here we move to foreign travel. You can see that actually the company overexpensed. It reported 20,000, where the budget was only 10,000. We can allow only 15% deviation, again, since they didn't request a budget revision. So the maximum that we can allow, it's 11,500. For subcontractors, it's the same case. They overexpensed. They reported 70,000. We can allow 15% deviation. So only 57,500 could be accepted. And then for consultants, they didn't have a budget item at all. So even though they reported 45,000 and they expensed 45,000, we can't recognize any of it since there is no budget item for these consultants. So altogether, we can recognize 599 plus 5% overhead. So you'll see that in what the foundation sees from a report of 698, we recognize only 628. And from that, we can pay only 50%. That's the grant. So in this case, you see a company that had a budget of 693. They actually expensed more than the budget, but they ended up not utilizing the entire grant. All this could have been avoided if the company was sent us a request for budget revision, and the budget was amended according to actual expenses. So please be aware of those rules and send us a request ahead of time, so we can so we can approve the request. And usually those requests are quite common. and you should be okay with receiving the approval. Now I'm moving on to the next part, the last part that deals with repayments. So I'll start just referring to the CPFA, the section that deals with repayments, so you are knowledgeable.
Natalie?
Yes.
Natalie, there are some questions that okay. Maybe I'll read you a couple of questions, okay?
Sure, yes.
One of them says, should we report real salary that was paid, or is $100,000 the annual maximum?
So for employees that are above 100,000, it's enough to report 100,000. I mean, base your calculation on 100,000 on the okay. multiplication that I said. Employees that are below, you should report actual salary.
Another question is, what is included in social benefits?
What is included is what the company pays. That means that the 401k in the US, pension plan, in Israel we have a company vehicle, everything that the company that is reflected in the salaries tab. Things that you can report and are accounted for, we accept. We also accept vacation days on the accrual basis for the period. That means that not past days, but those that were accrued through the reporting period.
Okay, another question, is there any additional information required if one employee's salary is now higher than it was submitted in the original proposal? For example, the employee received a raise. Or should we just report the actual salary as it is now?
Yeah, you should report actual salary as long as the salary raise is within, I mean, normal percentage, is not something that is way okay. Unexpected. It's okay, just look at actual payments.
Okay, how far ahead of time must be the written request for budget revision be submitted before each interim report?
The budget revision actually doesn't necessarily need to match the reporting periods for each segment, but the only rule is the last request should be no later than 3 months prior to project termination. You can ask more than once for a budget revision.
But also, they can submit the budget revision with the report?
Yes, you can, but don't be late with the report just because the budget revision is not ready yet. The report should be submitted on time, and you can ask for revision before segment end or just after. I mean, when you're ready with it, send us the request.
Okay, and see here there are two questions that I hope you understand. One is previously reported refers to previous segments or budget?
So, the budget, there's only one column for budget and it doesn't change. And the full budget for the entire project. So it can't change. The previously reported, that means the actual expenses accumulated so far according to the last report.
Okay.
Just copy from the last report.
Okay. And is approved to date budget refers to cumulative to date?
No, that's the entire budget for the project. Just copy it from Annex A of the agreement. If you have a revised budget, then you copy it from our letter of approval.
Okay, and can Natalie restate the answer about the 100,000 ceiling for individual employee? I did not catch what we do with the additional salary. So this is for the Israeli side.
Okay, so employees that earn more than 100,000.
For the Israeli side, that's for the Israeli side.
Yeah.
For the US side is 150.
150,
right?
Yes. You can base your reports on 100,000. That means an employee, for example, Nizar, that earns 200,000, assume that this employee earned only 100,000. And for example, if this employee worked only 3 months out of 6, so you should take only quarter of a yearly salary. And if the employee worked only 20% in the segment, multiply it by 20%. And that's what you should report for this particular segment of 6 months.
Okay, so that's 100,000 for Israeli companies?
For US, yes.
Right. Okay, you can continue. Thank you, Natalie.
Okay. So now I'll move on to repayments. So repayments is something that, since our grant is a conditional grant, so you should be aware that we are looking forward to commercialization of the product that you develop and to see repayments in the future. That means that the project was successful, and that means that you reached commercialization and some other means of utilizing the project in the market. There are several sections that entitle the foundation to receive repayments. The most common one are repayments based on gross sales. You should be, once you reach sales stage, you should be repaying 5% of all revenues that are resulting from the project. Each company each company should report its own 5%. The obligation for repayments is a joint obligation. That means that even if only one company reaches commercialization and the other one didn't reach commercialization, the one that did reach commercialization should report sales and should report the 5% that the bird is entitled to. Other events that trigger repayments are outright sale of the product or transfer of control. In such cases, bird might be entitled to up to 50% of the proceeds from such a transaction. I'm saying up to because here we're looking into the transaction, so you should contact us, inform us of such a transaction. There's also a section in the CPFA that states that you should receive our approval, that we should be informed, and then we see how much exactly we're entitled to. In case of license agreement, the repayment is 30% of such transaction. And then there are pharma projects. Those are specific projects which the CPFA in the title and also in the approval letter states that it's a pharma project. Then there's a definition of conclusion of product development. In such case, we're also entitled for full repayment. As you can see, the full repayment is a legal term, and the definition of it is up to 100%, 150% of the grant. The grant, of course, is the joint grant of both participants. The 150% are reached after 5 years. You'll see in the agreement, there's an escalation table of starting from 100% after year 1. That means that 1 year after project termination, you still need to pay only 100%. That means just the grant with no escalation. After year 2, you will pay 113%. And then there's escalation, which reaches 150% after 5 years. The escalation stops there, and even if repayments are being paid for 10 or 15 years, it never goes above maximum obligation that can reach 150%. The report itself, that's a semi-annual report based on a calendar month. All companies will be receiving from us a request to send us a report from January to June or from July to December. The request will usually, the letter from us will be sent within a month after a semi-annual period, and the report should be sent to us within 3 months. Those reports, again, are only after project termination. You won't be receiving the reports while you're still in R&D phase. Here you can see the cover page of the report. You should report here the period of the project, again, the company name, the title, and the description of the product that was developed. Here, a short table. Here you present the forecast, sales forecast that you submitted to us for this particular period, the actual revenue that was received in the period, and the calculation of 5% for this from this figure. And that's actually the repayment that is due to the foundation. The report contains also some questions, not too many. You should, here you can see the questions. You should describe the innovation used in the project, the products which were not developed, not commercialized. I'm not getting into it too much, since you still have at least 2 years ahead of you before you'll be facing this report. And here we're also asking for you to provide 4 semi-annual periods of forecast. These numbers are used by us for our cash flow purposes of our forecast of our cash flow. Here again, you should have 2 officials sign the report. So I think the presentation is over. So at this point, I'd like also to refer to one more thing. The participants today, some of them are companies which were actually approved many months ago and already passed the CPFA signing stage. And some are just newly approved projects, which are just facing the CPFA ahead of time. So in order to face the CPFA signing process efficiently, the best practice is keep sending us information. Have already sent you a letter with all required material. So just start sending it to us once you have it ready. Don't wait to have everything ready all at once, especially the bilateral agreement between you and the other party to the project. From our experience, that's the agreement that takes the most time. So start working on your agreements and send us the information. We are the one that will be preparing the CPFA. You don't need to fill out the CPFA that you see in our website. You can just read it for your reference, but send us the information so we can fill out the agreement.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Natalie. There are several questions. Some of them actually are very specific, and I ask in my answers to write an email directly to Natalie, and she will be answering you, or even call her and talk to her. Those 1 or 2 questions that I think are better to be answered personally, okay, because they're specific.
Okay.
And there's some questions about repayments, but again, I think those questions should be answered in a conversation, because it's not easy to reply precisely in this setting. Okay, so I think if I look at the questions, most of them, or maybe all of them, were answered orally. Okay, it seems to me that if there are no more questions, we can wait 1 second or 2 and see if there is any other question being typed. We can try to answer them here in real time. If not, I will say thank you to our presenters, to Tal and Natalie. Thank you very much for your great presentations. And thank you very much to all of you for participating and for asking questions. We try to answer most of them in real time or orally in real time. And again, if you have more questions, we are here to reply to all of them. Our emails are on the website. I also wrote the email, Natalie's email here for some of you for the questions, and that's it. Okay, thanks a lot.
Good luck.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.